Welcome back to the Robertson Media Center at UVA. Let's continue our instruction on Audacity by discussing the basics of editing clips and the different tools available. Again, this video series will not provide a lot of detail, so if you need more information, check out Audacity's tutorial site. We'll provide the link below. Let's take a look at the primary tools here in Audacity. You'll notice that they're up here, the 6 of them in the primary toolbar. The first one we're going to look at is called the Selection tool. If I hover over, you can see it says Selection tool. It's F1. The Selection tool is like a typing cursor in a word processor. This allows you to select a point in time or to highlight a selection, much like a sentence in a word processor. So from there, you can apply changes to these selections. The most common change is simply to remove a selection. So I press delete right there, and I can remove that whole thing. I'm going to undo it. Notice that Audacity automatically shifts the remaining audio down, which is it's great for beginners, but frustrating if you want to keep the other tracks aligned. Say I have these sounds lined up with the music, which is this track down here, and I don't want the timing to change. So let's say I've lined up this one to start right as the music comes in, right here, right? And this one I want at the beginning, and then I want this little owl here in the middle of the music. But I do want to remove this last couple words here in this file. If I delete here, you'll see the rest now becomes out of sync, right? This moves over here, so these two are still in sync, but this one's off. And this can be a huge issue if you have a giant file and you're trying to time everything out. So for instance, if you're making music or if you're placing things in a specific time frame, you can see that that's going to cause an issue with sync. So this is a major limitation of deleting a selection. So I'm going to undo that. The easiest answer to this issue is the silence button, which is Command L or Control L on a PC. This button will silence the selection rather than remove it. So you can see that now it's flatlined. It's basically, it turned the volume down to 0 on that selection. Thus, your timing will not be altered at all. So it's very useful for music or anything that requires things to stay in sync. Command Z, I'll undo that. Similarly, you can use the Trim Outside button to keep only the selected region. So if you wanted to keep this lined up but get rid of everything else, you can then use this button, right? And that gets rid of everything else in that clip. So I'm going to undo that. And it's essentially the inverse of silence. You can keep your timing, but the rest the volume's turned down to 0. Well, now let's say that you want to move a track around. Well, the Selection tool will not do this for you. You'll need to change tools. So again, you're going to come up to the toolbar and select a tool named Time Shift. So it's F5. So don't be fooled by the poor name choice. This tool will not stretch or shrink your clip. It only moves the clip around through time. So watch as I grab this clip and slide it back and forth in time. It started at 0, beginning, and now it's over at about 5 seconds into the project. I can even drag it onto a different track. And since it's a stereo track, I can only move it to another stereo track. Mono clips only to mono tracks. So if I were to create, for instance, a mono track here, I cannot drag it onto this track. And vice versa. So I can't actually drag a mono track onto a stereo track either. Now that I can move clips, how can I cut one into pieces and move it separately? See, I have 2 clips here. Maybe I want to do that, right, with the music over here. So I'm going to go back to my Selection tool. Again, you have to change tools quite often. And find a point that you want to cut. So I'm going to choose this point here. And instead of cutting, this is called splitting. To split a track, you can go to Edit, Clip Boundary Split, which is kind of a lot of work. But you can see that right here, this is the keyboard shortcut. It's Command I, or on a PC, Control I. So it will split at the point that you have selected. You can see if you return to the Time Shift tool, now I can grab this and move it separately from the other clip. It's created this line here to show that there's a separation, and I can actually move it up to a different level of tracks if I want to. One more tool that you should be aware of is, let's say I've got talking, right? And then right through here, I'm going to move this over. Right through here, you can see that there's actually a lot of sound going on in the music. And this is going to make it difficult to hear. So there's something called the envelope tool. Now what this does is you can actually change volume over time. So you'll create what are called keyframes. They're points at which volume is set at a certain level. Now this can be really useful. I'll show you how. So I create a point here, and you'll see how there's a little dot there now? This is create a point exactly at that mark here in time where this is saying this is the volume here. And then if I choose a different spot, you can see I could change that volume. So it's going to animate between those 2 points. It's going to go from this volume down to this volume at this point. So if I'm going to move back to my time shift tool, and if I go to the envelope tool again, this might be a little bit more. I can create points here, and then I can say, oh, well, this has talking going on right now. So I'm going to drop down my music during the talking portion, and then I can increase the music afterwards, right? So I can have it kind of start with the music, go down for the talking part, and then come back up at the end. This is also great, for instance, if you want it to fade in. So you can create a point here and say, oh, I want it this loud there, and then you can fade in the beginning of the clip, which will make it kind of a gradual increase in volume from nothing. So that's going to help with the beginnings and ends of clips. And if you, for instance, want this to be a little bit quieter and then get louder again at the end, and then you can close down at the very end to make that fit along with this speaking part here. So those are the major tools. I don't recommend using the draw tool, the zoom tool, and especially not the very frustrating and confusing multi-tool. So stick with these three, and you can do most things that you want to do. So that's it for talking about the basic tools and the basic techniques in editing. Coming up next, we will talk about how to record, especially using one of our external USB microphones. Stick with us.